whatever you'd like to do. So good luck. Thank you.
So Sean, thanks for coming. Wanted to start off by getting your perspective a little bit as a central bank. When you undertook this process, how much did you plan and orchestrate ahead of time? For example, how much work did you realize or know about the effectiveness criteria before you began, or what the solution proposers might bring forth in the U.S.? I've heard some people say, hey, the Fed has put this together and they're orchestrating the whole process. How much of that is accurate? And share that perspective with us.
That's a great question. I think even within the task force, when we started the work, there was some curiosity about whether or not we were designing things in the back room and smoking cigars and all of that, but that really wasn't happening. Our main idea when we called stakeholders to come to the table was to make sure we had the right stakeholders at the table. So the one thing I would say that was kind of a key working we did to get the task force launched was we recruited a number of stakeholders that maybe perhaps even didn't initially express interest. You'll be interested to know that we had, through the course of the 2-year process, 1,200 task force members came in and out of the process. We didn't ever close the membership. We allowed organizations to switch out individuals for if they have different responsibilities, to keep everybody engaged. So we're very flexible about the process, but really concerned about ensuring we had the right stakeholders and the right breadth of stakeholders represented. So I think that when we got the right people in the room, we went through a couple of iterations of a participation agreement. As you can imagine, with all this great thinking that was being done by proposers, there was considerable concern about intellectual property rights to some of those ideas. And so we had to work really hard on a participation agreement that acknowledged and dealt with those issues. And we actually had 2 different agreements, one that initiated the process, then we figured out how we were going to do the work, and then we issued another participation agreement and relaxed some of the intellectual property concerns of many of the participants. So getting the right people in the room was key, and then we let the magic happen. I'll tell you that the magic for us was to make sure we had these breakout rooms facilitated. We hired Deloitte, their facilitation team, to help pull those rooms together. We had literally 12 breakout rooms going at different issues, and literally from a whiteboard starting to put up what areas of focus we should have. And then we were great scribes. We had a team of drafters that was taking down all the notes for all of those discussions and feeding them back to the whole task force. So we didn't come to the table with a preconceived idea of what these criteria would be. There'd been enough dialogue with the industry that we kind of had an idea. We all did collectively beyond just the Federal Reserve. But these meeting dialogues were really key to build it from ground zero to design this new payment system. So there was so much enthusiasm across the various stakeholders that I frankly was a bit concerned, not a bit concerned, very concerned that we weren't going to be able to pull this off with this many people. But the folks that came to the table, we all agreed we're going to have big ears and little mouths and make sure we listen to one another to get all the good thinking on the board and pull it together and play it back over and over and over. You remember, Bradley, in the development of that criteria, we had, I believe, 7 drafts of the criteria before we got to the final draft. And as Bradley mentioned, we had this process of red card, green cards to actually ferret out the concerns people had. If you had a red card, the process wasn't going forward, and we really dug into what the red card issues were to try to come up with the way forward. So it was a lot of hard work and done by stakeholders, not the Federal Reserve.
Hey, Sean and Brad. Question.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be possible to see if we get some questions? Or
Sure.
Is that a good time to do that? All right.
I have a question. I have a
up to you. Do you
question if
wanna-
they don't have a question, so.
So we'll
Is
start
there-
with them, and if there's a lull, I don't think there'll be a lull, but let's see what happens. Okay, I saw your hand first.
Darn, I don't get to ask my question.
Hi, I'm Ariel Muslera. I'm from Argentina, and I have several hats. One of them is with a blockchain company. And you know, Argentina has a long history of issues with centralized money controls. And this is true in many parts of the world. So when I was listening to the arguments in favor of the digital currencies and against some distributed ledgers approaches, I kind of reminded myself that a vast majority of the world manages cash not because they don't have an alternative, but because they don't trust a central government. And in a way, although I think that at a massive scale, it's impossible to think that blockchain technologies or Bitcoin or whatever it is, cryptocurrencies, will replace fiat, I still think that there's a space for replacing actual physical cash, because when you go to the slums in Peru, in Buenos Aires, in Rio, lots of people hold cash in their hands, which is not secure, which sometimes lead to robberies, and they lose all their money, right? So I think that distributed ledgers without control of governments are a solution for at least that part of the problem. Then we can discuss whether or not you can argue if it's a massive solution. So I wanted to kind of ask you what you think about that.
So
Is that specific enough question? Can you work with that?
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. I think the general question is, what do we think about distributed ledgers as a solution for people to hold cash, right? And in relation to maybe a government that doesn't imbue the system with so much trust, there's no question that distributed ledger technology assists people in holding cash, and what they represent is an innovation that will have an impact on next generation payment systems as we move forward. I don't think they're quite mature yet, but that's okay because they're evolving quickly and they're going to continue to improve. And their learning is as important as our learning over the last 200 years around what payments are and what national currencies are. So as those two areas start to merge, I think we're going to get some fireworks and some excitement that really start to make a difference in next generation payment systems.
Yeah, I would just add that I think you look around the world around digital currencies, distributed ledger, lots of interesting work going on. When you contemplate, at least with the task force contemplated that kind of technology to build a new payment system, it was, as Bradley said, a bit premature to think about that kind of breadth with that kind of capability. So we're going to monitor and look at that. The task force has recommended that this governance framework keep a focus on these emerging technologies, and the Federal Reserve is doing the same.
Another question?
Hi, my name is Spencer Montgomery. I'm actually speaking later on cryptocurrencies and blockchain for Microsoft. Are either of you purchasing cryptocurrencies?
Purchase.
I think Sean holds a lot in the central bank vault. Just kidding.
Right. It's all right here,
I had a Bitcoin wallet, and I switched phones and lost it, my app. So I lost access to my currency, but I haven't purchased any since. So still kind of on the sideline watching where it's going.
Thank you. Next question?
Hi, this is Mariano from Barclays Bank. And experiences in United Kingdom and Singapore give the sense now that things are moving into immediate payments or instant payments. So isn't in US, isn't the opportunity for you to, better? Okay, sorry, maybe again the question.
Better, yep.
Yes, sorry. Mariano Diaz from Barclays Bank, and my question to you is, isn't you missing the opportunity in US to implement a instant payment solution instead of a faster payment? In United Kingdom and Singapore, as you might know, instant payment is what is coming next. And the concept of instant, opposite to faster, is the service level. So on faster payment, you have a service level of approx 3 to 5 seconds. Usually the payment is completed. But banks, when you start working on faster payments, you allow them approx 2 hours to complete a payment. Not sure if you follow me there. So across the banks, when you implement a scheme like faster payments, what UK did and Singapore did, is that you allow banks to give 2 hours of completing the payments. So as an example, you are having a mobile top-up in your mobile and you are running out of balance, and an instant message comes to your mobile to request you to complete a payment transaction before you run out of balance. And that's an instant payment because it's going in 1 second. In a faster payment scheme, right now in UK and Singapore, you allow 2 hours to complete that payment. So it's not as instant as, and because consumers and the world where it's evolving, instant is what is coming next. So as I see what you are developing now, isn't the opportunity for you to implement an instant payment instead of working on a faster payment because technology is there. So just commenting, because it's a window maybe for the United States be the first to implement an instant payment. It's a big theme I know because all banks getting agreed and everything, no? But just on what could be coming next.
Did you get the question?
So instant versus faster is the question.
Yeah, I think his question, let me see if I can restate it, is that there is, in the UK, faster payments, and there's also this idea of instant payments, and in the UK, they allow up to 2 hours, am I thinking about your question correctly, with a faster payment, and so the real question is, how do we get to instant payments, right? And are we thinking about that differently in the US? And in Sean's message, I'll let you respond to the question.
Yeah, so when you look at our criteria, and I encourage you to look at that criteria, all of us believe that the criteria, not only in the speed component, but every component of that criteria, that we wanted to set the bar fairly high for what we wanted this new payment system to do. So in the speed category, we actually, in every category, we actually assigned an effectiveness rating based on the capability within the payment system being contemplated. So we had a very effective, and
Somewhat effective.
somewhat effective, then not effective. So there's 4 ratings. And in the speed component, we actually had times associated with, I think very effective was less than 3 seconds, or 3 to 5 seconds or so was the aspiration. Now, what's being built and contemplated, some of those are not at that speed yet, but we're aspiring to have this instant payment or real-time payment capability to be at that most effective level ultimately. So that's the goal, that's the aspiration, and some of the capabilities that are being built are gearing towards that type of capability. I think our thinking with the criteria generally, beyond just the speed issue, was that no payment system was born perfect and complete and had all the bells and whistles that you'd want in it, that it gets iterated upon over time, and that our idea with this effectiveness criteria is to say, here's where we want it to go. We're probably going to start out here and then work our way towards this aspirational goal of the criteria. So that's how we're contemplating that here in this context.
Thank you, Sean. Good questions. I think we have time for one, or if we're concise, maybe 2 more. Over there. Okay, here we go. Bring my running shoes next time. Was it you, sir?
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Paulo, and I run a company called Cambista. It's a currency exchange company to try to solve the security here in Lima, because it's a very dollarized economy. And I'm very curious as to what are the most significant applications that you could try to provide us in terms of blockchain use. I don't know if my question was clear enough.
In terms of launching a new system?
Instead of uses of blockchain.
Uses of blockchain, what are the most significant? You know, we're seeing banks, large banks, organize. As an example, there's obviously other entities that have been funded separately. So you're seeing a company like Ripple. Ripple is using it for cross-border We're seeing some financial companies that are trying to use it for stocks and derivatives, those kinds of things, and storing information that, titles or deeds, those kinds of things. So we're seeing some ideas emerge around the concept of a distributed ledger, where it's actually becoming very broad in terms of its application, not just for cryptocurrency.
And lots of different experiments, frankly, right? Is really what Bradley's talking about with large financial institutions, insurance companies. Lots of different businesses are looking at the technology and actually set up labs to test how they could, leverage the technology to improve and make their daily processing functionality more efficient, because blockchain provides a lot of that capability. So I think you'll continue to see a lot of that experimentation with blockchain technology, but more in a specific use case kind of way, but not in a full payment system way initially.
Thank you. All right, next question. We have one in the back here.
All right, we're going to end with this question. Sean, Brad, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules and joining us here in Peru.
I don't know if you can ask questions, Paul.
Yes, I can.
Is that fair?
I'm going to get the last question here, and it's for Sean. The work that you've done on the task force, how can we make this available to the countries of Latin America? Is the Federal Reserve willing to share the framework and the learning and the knowledge with the Peruvian government, with the Mexican government, with the Argentine government, to help provide that as a base and a reference point as they are moving forward? Here in Peru, they actually have an e-money law that was in place in 2013. So it's actually one of the most advanced countries in Latin America as it relates to digital currency. And there's a lot we can learn from each other. What resources would you be willing to make available to Peru in terms of the learning that you've gone through over the last 2 years?
Super. I'd love to address that and also extend the hand, because not only in an information sharing way, but as things develop, in your country, we'd love to learn more about what you're doing here, because it sounds to me like there's already some legal infrastructure in place for your country to kind of get going on it, maybe more of a commercial encouragement that's needed and activity that's needed. I think in our space in the U.S., it's more of we're on the commercial side, end user perspective. We're trying to bring that together before we talk about what we're going to need to do in changing legal frameworks and or regulatory frameworks to support the change. So we're in two different spots, but I think we can learn from one another and hope that continues. I was in Brazil several months ago, and we were having a very good dialogue about where they're at and their evolution towards a more robust payment system for themselves. We are committed at the Federal Reserve to 100% transparency on where we're at and what we're doing in our country. You get to our website, you can sign up. You don't have to be an American citizen to sign up on our community, to follow and see every piece of documentation we're putting together here. On my slides, you saw the website material. There's YouTube information. There's Twitter feeds, all kinds of ways to communicate with us and participate and avail yourselves of all of the work that we're doing. Bradley and I, of course, are working on this next work stream that will also generate lots of interest and new thinking that we'll want to share and plan to share broadly, not only with the domestic U.S. market, but internationally with countries like Peru and others that have an interest. We're very interested in sharing what we're learning, but as well turning the coin around and saying, what are you guys doing, and how can you help us do better in this? Some of our history here was some of the media outlets and some of the naysayers perhaps in the U.S. were on the front end of this saying, the United States is behind the rest of the world in faster payments and a more innovative payments approach. And I didn't look at that as a negative. I looked at that as, hey, we're not on the bleeding edge of of what's happening, and we're going to learn from other countries about what worked, what didn't work, and how can we apply those lessons learned in our country. So this is a two-way street, and would love to entertain and support that kind of interaction, Paul, and look forward to it.
Wow, thank you.